Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Butterfly Effect podcast. And today is a Life is Strange themed video off the back of another one of our videos, which really was talking about how a lot of the fan base do not want to see double exposure 2. So Liam here has actually got an idea of how he would revive the Life is Strange franchise. So lad, without further ado, I'll throw it over to you.
Thank you very much, mate. So yeah, like that video we did where we said should double exposure 2 be scrapped, a lot of people said Life is Strange is dead, and you know, you might be right in saying so, but I did think that like after Life is Strange 1 we had Life is Strange 2, then we had True Colors, where like it's in the same universe but they give us a different power and location, and I think there's a heartbeat in the franchise, mate. I still think there's a world where Life is Strange can work, and I just think we need to move away from like bringing back old characters. I just think we need a completely fresh character, a fresh premise, a fresh theme. So yeah, basically, mate, I'm here to pitch Life is Strange 4 Shadow, and after I do, it'll be interesting to see if you would pick this game up and if you would play it, mate. So in a nutshell, I'll talk about the main character first, mate. I've gone with a 27-year-old male called Elijah Hart, or Eli for short. Reason being I've gone for 27, mate, is you know how like a lot of people who played Life is Strange, the game was a decade ago. I think it would be interesting to move away from teens for a young adult, almost like someone who's grown up with the game, is now in their 20s, right, maybe, or 30s, kind of have a character which relates to them more. So like you're leaving those teen themes at the door, and this time you explore more adult themes. Now I know that is probably a risky thing, since you could say like Life is Strange, like a coming of age game where it's about, learning who you are, going through like relationship problems and stuff. I still think a lot of those things do exist in adulthood. It's just, it would be more interesting from that more relatable perspective of the adults who've grown up with the original game. So I don't know if that's something you can like imagine or something you agree with.
I think so, yeah. I mean, it would certainly give it a more fresh take. I mean, when you think about the games that have been done so far, they are very geared around people in their maybe, teenage years, early 20s. So I think a natural evolution for it to bring it to someone a little bit older. Yeah, why not? And I think it then forces you away from perhaps your schools, your colleges, your have become a little bit tropey in the previous games. So yeah, so far so good, mate.
So like in a nutshell, like Eli's whole arc is going to be like how he's like now an adult, he's grown up, but his friends have moved on. I've deliberately made him a male again, maybe because it's like I'm more familiar with those topics, since I am a guy who recently was in my 20s, not anymore unfortunately. But essentially, like there's themes here that I think you can explore, such as kind of like I want to like one thing I'll go to later is that this game will be set in a city, which is something fresh which we've not seen before from the Life is Strange games. But like I think there's interesting themes like such as like friends that move on because they move away, some of them marry, have kids, and you could feel like maybe a little bit like you've been left behind a little bit and you're kind of isolated in this city. I think like the first game is a coming of age thing of like going to college, rekindling friendships. The second game talks a lot about sort of like racism and xenophobia. I believe True Colors is heavily about sort of LGBT like Q plus rights and stuff. I wanted to go for like a game which covers sort of like maybe like the male loneliness epidemic and like a lot of stuff to do with like mental health. So I just think that could be like a nice grounded game, and that leads us on to the power, mate. I think it would be interesting, and we've had time travel, we've had telekinesis, we've had empath. This time I want to go for a character who can turn invisible, because I think that is almost like kind of like an amplification of Eli as a character. He feels like he's not seen, he feels like he's been left behind, and I think invisibility would be a good trait. I don't know if you ever watched the UK series back in the day, Misfits, which is about 5 youngsters who are doing community service since they've done crimes to go to prison. And a lot of their powers are interesting because they were kind of like based off of their personalities and what they go through in life. So yeah, Eli, mate, he's in a city. It's male loneliness epidemic, and he can turn invisible. What do you make of that?
I really like it. I like how it's knitted all together with, like, you know, the male loneliness thing. It's the something that I think a lot of people will relate to. So I think that's certainly ticking boxes. You're going to have an audience there. But I mean, if you've got it planned out, man, I don't know how far you've gone with this, how far you've mapped it out. But I'm interested to see in what circumstances, what sort of like the antagonist or like the threat in the game that, you know, makes Eli have to use invisibility, or, you know what I mean, to overcome it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked, because I have that.
Oh,
so yeah, like one thing I'll talk about as well is the side characters. So I kind of wanted to do the thing that you know, the games have previously given us, where they've given us sort of like different romantic options as well, you know, like both male and female. So like, you know, whether you're bisexual, whether, you know, you're lesbian, gay, straight, you can like kind of like have like an interest, and you can even go platonic, you know. So the female love interest is going to be called Talia. She's going to be like an old friend who is a part of Eli's old friend circle, and yeah, she's like basically like moved off. She's in a relationship with this guy. It's a little abusive. There's some kind of, you know, domestic violence themes there, which are going to be quite trivial to like do, but she's also got a kid as well. Basically, the other thing as well is that, you know, like in these games, they heavily cover some form of creative outlet. So Max does photography. Even in Lost Records, which is like unrelated, but you've got the videography. Sean does his sketchbook, and I believe Alex in True Colours does music. I wanted to come up with like my own different thing, and I was wondering what form of art could we do, and I was like toying with ideas like poetry, journaling. But I ultimately landed on, because it's going to be set in a city, I was thinking like graffiti and street art. And I thought there could be a really cool thing, which I'll get into a lot more later about how the street art element would work. But in the nutshell, this Talia character used to be quite rebellious when, you know, she was younger with Eli. And, you know, like you can tag art in the city together, and then a big part of it is about maybe rekindling a form of maybe potential romance or their friendship through art. And I thought that could be quite cool. I also wanted a character called Mika. Now, I think Eli should work in quite like a kind of a low sort of like office job, which kind of like, you know, a lot of people can relate to, because I didn't want a nice, exciting job. I wanted something a bit more relatable, a bit more grounded, like something officey. And I think like Mika could be like, you know, a new friend or romantic path, someone who's quite emotionally open but grounded, and like can relate to Eli and maybe be like something new, something stable for him. And the other character I've written down is this mayor who, you know, I'm going to go for a female mayor actually, called Evelyn Crane, who's the antagonist of the game, who has this big campaign to clean up the city. She's basically slashing funds. So a big part of like, you know, the whole game is there's going to be some very big like anti-government themes in there as well, about how you're stepping up to the government. So it's going to be a little bit political, but not too much where it takes away from like the gameplay and kind of like a lot of the stories and themes I've got brewing here.
Nice, because I was very curious. We know when you said about that, the racism, the homophobia and stuff that's been explored in previous Life is Strange games. When you started out, I was thinking, I wonder what the undertone's going to be. So I'm guessing it's like, is it like the class system?
It
is. That like what's being talked about? Economics, the class system, that sort of thing.
Bingo, because, you know, like, I've not shied away from it. You know, I'm very like left-leaning politically, and I don't try to like do that too much, but I do think these Life is Strange games do often have a big political, or not political, but like topical theme, you know. And this would be about the class system, since, you know, we do live in a world where like the 1% of rich really, you know, steal and cut like, you know, the people below dry, you know. And I did kind of want a game that kind of touched on that, you know. So you've got this like wealthy mayor, and I wanted, you know, someone to be like very high classed to be the antagonist of this game. And yeah, there might be some sort of lower class people, like, you know, like maybe like a gang who doesn't want you kind of like, you know, doing art because maybe they're doing it, and I think there will be that as well. But I do like the idea of maybe having them kind of turncoat and kind of join Eli to kind of band together against this mayor figure. So yeah, very much, mate. The underlying theme in this game is quite political, and it is very sort of anti-power.
I was going to say, you're fascinated with like the theme of homelessness, aren't you? So I was thinking, I mean, surely you're going to get a little bit of that in there.
Yeah.
Especially if you're talking about banding an army of people. You know, maybe that could be a part of it.
And this is like very much in sort of like, you know, bullet at the minute, so it's like I'm welcome to ideas, you know. And yeah, you've said that. I wasn't thinking about it, but yeah, no, I've got to add some homelessness in there as well, because especially that even goes with the political thing as well, about how people have been wronged. Maybe you can have like a homeless person who was an artist, but because this mayor have slashed funds away from like maybe like art galleries and stuff, that this artist maybe doesn't have an outlet or a financial income source anymore. So that like again gets that fuel, you know, against, you know, the powers above kind of thing. And I do think this could blend into kind of the invisibility as well, because like we sort of almost saw a little bit of it with double exposure, where you can phase through and sneak past people by jumping across timelines. But I think you have one timeline and you kind of explore that again where you're invisible, and there's some like maybe stealth mechanics, maybe you like tag walls and stuff, but getting caught, you know, can have consequential like things that happen and stuff. So yeah, like, and another really cool thing I wanted to do, mate, is that the gameplay is going to have a really cool thing where with the graffiti system, you know how like in Before the Storm, like Chloe Price could tag a wall and you could almost just choose like, oh, do you want an eye or do you want an alien? I almost wanted a system where you have memory flashbacks which cover like, you know, former like memories with this Talia girl or his old friends or something, and based off of which, you know, art you decide to tag, it will trigger a different memory. So there's a lot of replay value in this game as well.
So dare I say, is it like a totem system in a weird way? Like, is that what you're saying? It's almost like you do the bit of art and that brings a memory, or like, but obviously that like from the Until Dawn it's like a premonition, isn't it? But like it's the opposite, so like you're thinking of something that happened before.
Yeah, so it unlocks a memory, but like while Until Dawn, so you know, you'll see a potential thing from the future, this will see a potential thing from the past. So it might be that you're tagging with this Talia girl, and it might be that like, you know, I don't know, that you can either tag like a magic 8-ball or a soccer ball, and then maybe like that, you know, like basically brings back a different flashback, something to do with an item there. But you know, you'll get a different one. So if we say did an analysis series on this game, you can say, oh well, I did the football, and I'll be like, oh, I did the magic 8-ball. I had this memory where Talia and, you know, then we're in a park and they used the magic 8-ball and they spoke about this theme, and then you were like, oh, I had a flashback where they were playing football together, and then, you know, this like cool bit of dialogue happened. So I just think it will be cool to have different memories come from different, you know, tags basically.
Nice. And you know what? You said it a while back, but I've got to bring it up because there will be Life is Strange fans that are probably thinking this, so I've got to ask on their behalf, mate. But with the thing being street art and graffiti, is there a temptation to bring back a certain someone that's known for their street art and graffiti from a previous Life is Strange game? Or would you be like, no, this is a completely fresh thing, I'm not going to hark back to previous games?
And I'm guessing you're talking about Chloe Price, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Of course, yeah. So, no, I wouldn't, because we saw the backlash of double exposure, right? You had people who were angry that, you know, she, if you did have the ending where you choose to save Chloe, that she was cheapened by talking to Victoria Price, that she just split, you know, Chloe up with Max for like no real kind of like, I mean, not massive reason, I would say. So I would avoid it. I'm open to having previous Life is Strange characters back. Maybe one of like the, dare I say it, maybe someone who was at Blackwell. Maybe like an Evan, or maybe like a Kate Marsh who was in a photography courses in the city, and they've, you know, become wrong done by this Evelyn Mayer character because, you know, their art's done. But then again, you would cross the thing where maybe they got wiped out in the storm. But, you know, like I definitely think there is potential to bring back the previous Life is Strange characters. But Chloe is a no-go, mate.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think that's probably wise as well, because even as we've seen with double exposure, you're then opening yourself up to choices from previous games, and it can all get a little bit messy, can't it? But
Sure.
mate, that sounds really good. Is there any more? Is there any more that you've got, or was that a wrap?
A little bit. I mean, I'll talk about the city a little bit. I've invented the city called Halicon City. It would be slightly inspired by maybe like a Seattle or Chicago. I like the idea of Eli's flat being like very small and like depressing, but like really beautiful at the same time, where you've got a really high up window, there's like rain on the window, and then you look out and there's a lot of night lights and stuff. Music's a big part of these Life is Strange games. You know, sometimes we have like fluffy acoustic going on. I know it is a bit of a drastic steer away from previous Life is Strange games, which is like set in these small villages, maybe in forests and stuff, and I'm bringing it into a city. So I would like to kind of have like dream pop and lo-fi. So like for those that love music, if you know bands like Men I Trust, Chromatics, Clairo, I would have stuff like that going on. So it would be quite cool. And because it's set in a city as well, although these games are quite linear, I do like the idea of just getting some groceries, picking up milk, and then you would kind of go through the city where it's actually quite lively, where you've got a lot of NPCs walking around. And yeah, granted, you're not able to talk to most of them, but I just think it would like fill up, you know, and bring a bit of life into the series. Because, you know, you talked about how like in Life is Strange 2, there's times where you're walking through a really big dead forest. I think, you know, in a city it would be slightly different. Sure, you can examine objects and buildings and stuff, but like it could really paint that picture of like maybe shut down art galleries and stuff. So it really paints that world of what's happening here. So yeah, like I just think that would be a really cool fresh take on Life is Strange. I know I've changed a lot of drastic things, such as like the age group, the target group, the settings, the music, but maybe that's what Life is Strange needs. We've talked about Life is Strange, how it's potentially dying. I think it needs a pivot, and I think it needs a fresh injection, and I think Life is Strange Shadow could be what gives it that ignition.
Could I ask what's the Shadow about? Where does the Shadow come into the title? Is it because like he's a little bit background and no one really doesn't really have a face, or?
Yeah, I guess it leans into the power since he's invisible, but he still leaves his mark with the tagging. I kind of toyed with some name ideas and I had residue, but I don't know, I just leaned into Shadow because I think it has more of a thing. And also, there is a band called Chromatics and they have a song called Shadow, and I think that will be a big prevalent song for a key moment. So I just think there could be a few ties to it, but I think, yeah, Shadow really talks about maybe how Eli feels, since he feels like he's been left behind, since he feels like he is invisible in the background, but it also ties into the power a little bit as well.
Look, I really like it, mate, I've got to say, and I think that what these games should be, almost similar to like the Dark Pictures in a way, is an anthology based. And with an anthology, you would want something different each time, wouldn't you? And I think that we have seen this sort of, like you were saying, with like the locations, these sort of similar, you know, very easy on the eye, nature-filled places in the Life is Strange franchise. I think, yeah, to really shake things up, I'd be very open for it to be in a city a little bit more grounded, and I think that will make the power even more good to use, you know. So yeah, really good, mate. I mean, guys, let us know what you think in the comments below of Liam's idea about what, you know, Life is Strange 4 would look like. If you've got ideas as well, of course, let us know in the comments section below. And yeah, nice one, mate. I'm on board. To answer your question, yeah, I'd be in for Life is Strange Shadow.
And so yeah, starting charge is 50 quid, but if you want a cat, it'll be 80 quid. So yeah, send the money through to our Patreon for a game that's never going to happen, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, there we go, guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you in the next one.
For now, guys. See you soon.